Okay, everyone, as you are getting ready to do your technical research report, I just wanted to go over a few things on citation and how to decide if the sources that you found are credible. I think this is probably just a quick kind of refresher, but it's always important to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. So, what exactly do you want to cite? So, of course, you want to be able to you want to cite a direct quote. That is when you are using a sentence or a section word for word. When you include that in your own paper, you use quotation marks, you put the page number, the author's name. So that is obviously something you want to cite. But paraphrasing, I find that paraphrasing gets people a little bit more, or can be a little bit more complicated. So, paraphrasing is when you are summarizing a sentence or a section in your own words. It's typically, and we'll talk more about that in a second, but it's about 10% of the original passage. So you don't have to put quotation marks around that, but you do have to include the page number, the author's name. Make sure that the readers of your paper know that this information is somebody else's information. And a lot of times people want to include graphs in their reports, maybe images, map images, whatever you think is going to be helpful to your report. But you still need to cite them, especially if you're just getting them from a Google search. Definitely have to cite where you got them. Um, you don't have to cite commonly known information. So some things like pollution is harmful. I think everybody knows pollution is harmful. Something like George W. Bush was the US president. Everybody at this point who would be reading your report is going to know that. Something else, maybe a quote, a famous quote. So something like, yes, we can. That is really associated with Barack Obama, so you don't necessarily have to cite that as being something he said. So, let's go on to paraphrasing. Again, it is your own interpretation and summary of an idea or a quote. So it should be 10% or less similarity to original material. And you still cite it, okay? It is still always important to give the originator of information credit for their information, okay? So let's take an example, and I'm going to put this PowerPoint on our website so you can always go back and really take a look, or you might want to just kind of pause it here and read through it. But here's the original passage. Students frequently overuse direct quotation in taking notes, and as a result, they overuse quotations in the final research paper. Probably only about 10% of your final manuscript should appear as directly quoted matter. Therefore, you should strive to limit the amount of exact transcribing of source material while taking notes. And as you can see there, it is quoted. It is James D. Lester in his book, Writing Research Papers. Okay, so legitimate paraphrasing. Here we go. Again, if you want to take pause here to get a good idea of what's going on, this is a good time to do that. In research papers, students often quote excessively, failing to keep quoted material down to a desirable level. Since the problem usually originates during note taking, it is essential to minimize the material recorded verbatim. And as you can see there, it is attributed to Lester, pages 46 through 47. So again, this is legitimately summarizing the the passage and then also giving credit to Lester as writer. An acceptable summary. Students should take just a few notes in direct quotation with sources to help minimize the amount of quoted material in a research paper. So this is really just summarizing kind of one point of that passage. But again, it is given attribution to Lester. And here, completely plagiarized. And again, I will put this on our Canvas site, or you might want to take a second to pause and read through. But students often use too many direct quotations when they take notes, resulting in too many of them in the final research paper. In fact, probably only about 10% of the final material should consist of directly quoted material. So it is important to limit the amount of source material copied while taking notes. So really this just changed a few words, but for the most part, sentence by sentence, this is almost exactly like the original section. So you want to make sure when you're paraphrasing to not necessarily condense the information, but to change how it's described in total. Okay, so I know a lot of times, and I'm just as guilty of it, is Googling something and kind of reading the first few things that pop up. But I want you to think about the type of information that you're getting in those first few. So, really thinking about evaluating your sources. So, a few things to think about as you are looking at articles online and deciding if they are going to be useful is to think about the purpose of the article on the website. Is it to inform or is it to sell you something? If you see a lot of ads framing the article, if there are pop ups that come up, that usually indicates a commercial purpose and maybe isn't as credible as you would like it to be. Authority. Who is the author? Is there a name? Does that name have any associations or any affiliations? Again, if you do not see a name or they don't explain what makes them credible, then the article is probably not credible. Timeliness. Is there a date on the article? How old is it? If there's not a date or you can't find a date, please, I would think about not using this. And if this article is more than a few years old, it's probably not as credible as you would like it to be either. And objectivity, thinking about bias. Is it very one sided? Is it in some ways attacking another side? Then this probably isn't an article that you would want to use. And finally, and this isn't in the book, the rest of these did come from the book. I find that the usability of site can really help you to make these decisions about credibility. If it's a hard to navigate site, if it's hard to find information that you need, then it's probably not a very credible site. Okay. So, how to use Wikipedia. You're probably surprised that I'm even bringing up how you can use Wikipedia. Um, and to be honest, you would be surprised at how many papers that I get each semester that cite Wikipedia. So, let's talk about a way to use it. I think it's a great place as a starting place to look at what kind of information is out there generally. Also, at the end of each entry, they have their own sources listed. Go to those sources and look and see what's happening and see what kind of sources they use. So, again, I think of this as a really great starting place. But in other words, never cite Wikipedia. Or for that matter, WikiHow, Yahoo Answers, About.com, Ask.com. Again, you would be surprised at how many essays, projects I get that do cite these. And you could probably think of 100 more that are like these. Don't cite those either. So the citation format, I'm going to ask you to use MLA or APA because that is the norm. And I want you to do that both in terms of in-text citation and works cited. In our textbook, APA information starts on page 573, and all the MLA information you need starts on page 604. So make sure that you check out those pages as you are citing your information throughout your paper and then again at the end in the works cited. Okay, thanks everybody. If you have questions, let me know.